3rd, 2021, City of Broussard Council Meeting. Please silence your cell phones, and if anyone from the audience would like to comment on an item listed on the agenda, please fill out a blue card at the back of the room and hand it in to our city clerk. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 5 minutes. Please stand for the pledge. Councilman Higginbotham, would you lead us in prayer?
Yes, sir. We, the members of the Broussard City Council, beg of thee, Almighty God, to enlighten our minds so that our work will be just and fair in all things. Give us courage and strength to fulfill our duties according to the laws of the land, and fulfilling also the holy will on earth and in heaven through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Item 2.1, acceptance of the minutes of the November 9th, 2021 regular meeting and the November 11th, 2021 special meeting. Do we have a motion to accept?
A second.
So the minutes were supplied in the council's packet. Tina, do we have any public comment?
No public comments.
Council discussion?
Question.
District 2,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
District 6,
Yay.
motion carries.
Ordinances for introduction. Item 3.1, ordinance number 21-712. An ordinance amending and reenacting section 18-258 of the Broussard Municipal Code establishing flood and drainage standards. Do we have a motion to introduce?
I move.
A second.
Our presenter tonight is our city civil engineer, Mr. Walter Como. Welcome, Walter.
What we're doing tonight is kind of cleaning up some things issues we've over the last couple of years we've run into that we thought we needed to make some tweaks to the ordinance. Nothing we're doing changes what we're requiring. It's just how we go about doing things and then tightening up some language. Some of the language in the ordinance previously was ambiguous, and when there's ambiguity, we get into arguments with people or whatever. So we're trying to, in a certain sense, kind of simplify some of this and then tighten up some other things. The thing to remember in all of the things we're doing here is some of this, I'll just go through it and explain as I go. Y'all are all aware if a house is located in the 100-year floodplain, you have to, based on federal regulations, the floor of the structure has to be at or above the base flood elevation. Several years ago, we and along with everybody else in Lafayette Parish changed that to 12 inches above the base flood elevation. We can't waive the building a house to the base flood because that's federal. The 12-inch part of it, which we've been doing for a long time now, they can come to the council and ask for a waiver. The problem we ran into was we had another requirement that you have to be 12 inches above the road in front of your house. And the way we had been interpreting that and enforcing it is, if you were in a floodplain, you had to be 12 inches above the base flood and 12 inches above the road, or whichever is greater. And y'all have heard several people ask you for waivers on that. But the wording wasn't good. So what we're doing here is cleaning up the wording. The other thing we're doing is giving either Mel or myself the ability to waive the 12 inches above the road or amend. In all cases, they would still have to do a hold harmless. We've been making them do that. And if they came to Mel or I and didn't like the result, they'd end up right back where they are before y'all asking for a waiver. So we really haven't changed much, but in a lot of instances, and we've had some recently, it doesn't make sense if the property is, falling away from the road towards a coulee or something, it makes no sense to make them build up. And that's something either Mel and I can figure out if we think it's appropriate to enforce it or to allow that. So that's one thing, and I think it would, take away maybe some people coming before you for, waivers that we can handle internally fairly easily.
Before, while you're on that subject, if y'all would refuse to give them a variance,
They could come to y'all and ask.
they'll come to the council.
Now, again, you can't waive the federal part of this. God, we have no ability
Right,
to do
that
that.
would be applicable if, it was a complicated situation, let's say, or somebody just didn't want to do it because they didn't want to do it.
Right.
Then it could
Right.
possibly get refused at the municipal approval level, and then the council would have the ultimate authority. I mean, we've had situations where people just don't want to do it because dirt costs money.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do it. But we have seen in the last couple of years some instances. I think Ray Gary championed one lately on Morgan. Maybe you were involved with that too, where in the older part of town, the new requirement puts the elevation of a new house 1 to 2 feet higher than the two or three houses next door to them or behind them. So those waivers had been easily granted by the council.
Right.
But it does take time to get on the next council agenda. So that's where this would be a more efficient system. And I know Walter's saying Mel or I, but what the ordinance reads is the public works director or the appointed city engineer, to be clear about that.
A fine
So those would
example-
be the two items. People with experience in this field would have that authority. And if there was a disagreement there, at any point, the council has the authority to do what it's doing today. This is just kind of a stopgap where it might be a little faster and easier in simpler situations.
And, just FYI, Mel and I agree about 99% of the time. So generally speaking, we're on the,
A fine example of that is on Flamboyant.
yeah. Well, we've had several. We had one on Main Street recently. We had one on Ambassador. And those were, in my mind, were simple. We didn't need to make them do that. It was being a little bit onerous for them. Generally speaking, 90% of the time, it's a good rule, but there are cases where it's not. The next issue is, has to do with doing work in a floodway. And a lot of people get confused. Everybody knows what a floodplain is. That's where you have to buy flood insurance. A floodway is contained within a floodplain, and by federal law, you're not allowed to build in it, except under very certain circumstances. But you're not supposed to place fill in it and do some other thing. We ran into a problem with that. And in some jurisdictions, they actually will fine somebody if they do that. What we chose to do is that if you do that, every permit you have with the city freezes. You can't do anything until it's corrected. Now, at that point, they can come to y'all and get some relief maybe or whatever, but we just really want to punctuate, don't do it, because it causes, we don't have any authority to grant permits of floodway work, none, that's federal. And it causes problems with FEMA, because we pass an ordinance to qualify for FEMA funding during hurricanes on. One of the requirements is we have to pass an ordinance that we agree to enforce all these things. So it puts us in a weird spot when somebody does this, and we're just trying to avoid those kind of things.
Walter, let me add that there is a mechanism for a developer or homeowner to work within that floodway, but it's a federal process. Like when you hear the term LOMA, they apply for a LOMA, they're offsetting these things, they want to build here, so they have to kind of mitigate what they're doing. We don't have any authority over that. But at City Hall, our authority is that the council has adopted an ordinance to uphold the federal regulations. That's on the books.
That's right.
And that helps us as a city maintain good standing with FEMA, and also with possibly with insurance rates because we're making sure that we hold this line. And it's what Ben deals with a lot of these federal regulations. What we offer is a lot of guidance at City Hall through Ben on how the process works when people want to, they need a yes or a no. So what this particular change does is kind of ensure that things don't go too far, because once they go too far, it's a long way to back out of it, and the city gets stuck in the middle of that. So this would help us kind of punctuate that we are following those, and to FEMA, that we are following those regulations.
And then the final thing that we're changing is we don't get a lot of these, but we do get some where people want to put a pipe in their ditch and cover their ditch. And the problem we have been having is the city engineer reviews those to make sure, because if you can imagine this. I want to cover my ditch, but I have 10 neighbors upstream of me. If I don't do it right, I can flood 10 people. That's the thinking. So we were having a problem getting, and what I want is I want the same quality of analysis that we would require on a new subdivision. What's the difference, right? We weren't getting that. So I asked the mayor, look, rather than go back and forth, and this was something I had suggested to the previous mayor when we started this, is let the city make sure everything's right. So the way this reads is that if you own a house and you want to cover your ditch, then you come to the city, on a simple project, you would pay the city $500. We would do the analysis, tell you what you need to do to do that. But we do reserve the right as the city to charge more, because we have situations that get pretty complicated. It's not it might be a business that wants to pipe 500 feet of ditch. So the 500 is more for a residential type thing. But if we see that it's getting complicated, then we can sit down with them and negotiate a different price. And I think that's what we should have always been doing. No, we didn't. And the engineer had to, but they would go hire a third-party engineer. And the problem is I wasn't getting the proper analysis to approve these things. Yeah.
It's happened for years, Walter, and that was exactly right. They had to have an outside engineer. Open ditches is not, you can't make them curb and gutter. That's the problem. And when we had them they hire an engineer to do that. I don't think we ought to get involved. That's just my personal opinion, because they came to us as an open ditch. It should remain open ditch. And we had that conversation for a long time, because they put these little catch basins in an open ditch. It doesn't hold the water.
But Kenny, even you say that, and I understand what you're saying, but then you have a business that wants to do something. It ends up becoming our problem no matter what. And the problem we're having is getting them to do the work that's needed to prove that it's not going to cause a problem to somebody else. And I've been fighting this battle back and forth, and we just never get there. We don't allow, the only open ditch subdivisions we allow now are commercial. We don't, every residential subdivision has to be curb and gutter now.
Right, but we can't retrofit Broussard and go back and cover every ditch with culverts in them. And that's what a lot of people would like to do, because how many times we all hear, I can't cut my ditch, I can't cut my grass, it's too deep. I mean, you want water in your ditch, you want it in the house.
I understand, but here's the other part of this. When they realize what they may have to do to be able to, that proposal, because I'm not, let me tell you what I've been getting is a picture or a plat of the property, and the engineer puts a pipe, and that's what he does. Now, when we build a new subdivision, I get a drainage report about this thing that I can look at and evaluate. And that's been the disconnect since this started, is on one hand, I get a piece of paper with a drawing, and on the other hand, I get a report that I can dig into and say, yeah, that's okay.
So I could maybe summarize it this way. So the law, the ordinance that's on the books today that the council has accepted and City Hall has to enforce is that a person can close an open ditch. They must hire an engineer. That engineer must submit that plan to the city, and then the city pays our civil engineer to review it. When there's a disagreement, which is more often than not, our engineer requires further analysis. The third-party engineer needs to charge more, and it's a cycle that's not working. But the council does say you can close that ditch as long as you get it designed. The problem is the engineers that are being hired are looking at an address, number 100 on, Example Street. With this system, if the council wants the city to close ditches in this system, our engineer would evaluate whatever length he sees, what he deems necessary to make sure that we don't have that flooding problem. The answer might be no, but the answer might be yes at this pipe. We're chasing our tails with the current ordinance. If the council chooses to say ditches are open, if that's how they were designed and they will never be closed, that's within the council's authority. But today you have a rule that's not working. We're not getting enough information out of the third-party engineers to make it work. So we're requiring more. Then that engineer's going back to the homeowner and needing to charge more, and that's never a pleasant conversation. So we're generally saying we need more, and then it's just this headache coming back and forth. This would be a mechanism where we cut that other person out, that other engineer out, and we can determine through our engineer at City Hall if it works or not. But the choice is the council's. We're asking you to clean up the rule to make it work better. But if you decide that ditches aren't going to be closed, like you mentioned, Kenny, that's within the council's authority.
But what these contractors have done in years past, and I've had landowners tell me this, open ditch is what, a third the cost of curb and gutter? At least, all right? So they make the development open ditch. And then they go, as they're selling the lots, well, man, you can go to City Hall and through time, y'all can get your ditches covered. Well, that gets them off the hook. So they try to make open ditch, curb and gutter, which is not designed to do.
Trust me, I know.
And I have had this all over my district, and
Well, I love the way the mayor put it. What's happening is just this endless loop, and we never get things resolved. I get phone calls, the mayor gets phone calls, I'm sure David, some of y'all get phone calls about this issue, and we're just not getting anywhere. And I don't have enough for me to say, I don't have enough information in front of me to say, I'm comfortable with this. And if I don't, I won't. So the calls, it just never ends, This way, we know we got a comfort level. And I think if you look at the whole process, Kenny, it's more efficient. And we know what we got.
but I think at one time we had declared that open ditch subdivisions remain open ditch.
No, y'all never did.
We
Y'all
never did close that
I
loop.
wanted y'all to,
Talked
way
about
back
it, we never did.
I wanted to, and nobody wanted to do that.
Oh, I wanted to.
Well, maybe you did, but that wasn't what the council did.
Yeah.
Hey, as of now, if somebody wants to close in the ditch, they buy the pipe
Oh, yeah. We can't do that.
and catch basins, they pay for the catch basins.
Yes.
Well, catch basins is kind of like, you need a big enough catch basin to fill up the pipe. To me, you don't want to put a little store-bought 15-inch catch basin.
Well, we cleaned that part of it up because people were putting these little plastic deals.
Yeah.
And it's not rated for road type Now they have, whatever they put in the ground has to be DOTD approved material, concrete pipe, whatever. So,
And
yeah. And
And Kenny, to answer your question, currently, if somebody closes in a ditch, they get the third-party engineer, Walter has to review it, and they do get a contractor to close that ditch in. They pay for the pipe, they pay for the contractor. Because as a municipality, we're trying to remove ourselves from that liability. If something happens, that's why Walter reviews it to make sure that nobody upstream is gonna flood. And we also, if it's installed incorrectly, then there's a contractor that did it that has insurance to cover his fault. We do, to a certain point. There is, but we monitor it as much as we can. And the design engineer is also responsible for making sure that it's built to his specifications.
I just feel a lot
All
more
understandable
comfortable.
with this.
Well,
ordinance.
and the mayor said it perfectly. The way we're doing it now is not working. It just isn't. And we tried everything you can try to make it work.
So Walter,
But what ends up happening is, how far back do you want? We're going back and looking at old Broussard right now, the whole thing. Not to say anybody did anything wrong. It was just over time, people did things, there was nothing. So we're stuck with that anyway. But, I have some subdivisions where people want to pipe their ditches. And my basic position has been that particular subdivision, I'm not gonna mention names. In 2016, not one house flooded. I don't want to convert a subdivision that drains well to one that floods. And I'll mention this one because I live there, Live Oak Estates. It drained beautifully when it was built, and then people put a bunch of junk in the ditches, and we're looking at something right now. And, that's what happened. That's why every jurisdiction in Lafayette Parish passed an ordinance saying if it's open, it stays open, period. We never did that. But we're not the only jurisdiction that struggles with this. Everybody does.
well, Walter, if we pass this ordinance, all liability would be on the city then.
It is anyway. It's a public road.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever is being put in the ditch, we're allowing it. It's ours.
Right, you get the third-party engineer, findings, and you'd have to go through it and okay it anyhow.
Exactly. And I mean, look, I'm not scared of the liability. This is my job. But I'm gonna do it the right way. I'll be honest, some of the stuff we get to review, I think some of these guys are insane. I would never put out what they're putting out. It's a lot of liability, and they don't really have in my opinion, have much of a hook to hang their hat on.
So Mr. Michael asked a question I think is worth repeating. If a person pays the $500 because they want the analysis to see if they can do it, and the answer is no, do they lose the $500? My answer to that is yes, they're paying for an analysis. Not every ditch will be able to be closed. A house on the top of a hill, and you're the first house on the top of a hill, it's a lot easier to close that ditch than if you're the bottom of the hill and you're the last house with 10 houses behind you.
And one of the things I run into a lot
That's right.
with residents is you let this guy do it or you let that guy, because they're at the end of the system. It's easy. Look, in drainage, not everybody's equal. If your house, if 12 houses drain in front of your house and you screw up, you flood 12 houses. If one house is upstream of you, that's different. And we should look at that differently because in the real world, it is different.
So certainly the city is not encouraging anyone to convert an open ditch to a closed ditch because an open ditch is more efficient, it holds more water, it just works better for drainage. But the reality of what we're facing is we do have residents that come to the city based on the ordinance, they're working within the law that this council has put in place and saying, I want to follow this ordinance and I want to close my ditch. And that process is not running very efficiently. So we're asking the council to look at that process again. We're offering a solution that we think will work better. The other solution would be what was mentioned, that open ditches will not be closed. But we think this is a workable system and encourage the council to allow us to try it, because I think there's some situations where people could benefit from it. That's certainly correct. And this is, I mean, if it's not working, we'll be the first to let you know, but then this is introductory. So there will be time between now and the next meeting for further discussion or to think about it before it's adopted. We're making adjustments to the entire drainage ordinance. So this is just one part of it and can be changed at the next meeting before the final vote, if any councilman wants to suggest a change.
And there are certain circumstances every once in a while that we run into where it's not so much of a, I don't want to mow my ditch. It starts to become a safety issue. And so there's a couple of reasons. The most common one is they don't want to deal with a ditch in front of their house. But there are other circumstances where you have a steep ditch and it's a safe erosion or a safety issue where it makes sense. So.
And certainly, I mean, you all know that Broussard was recognized recently by FEMA as a city who was being proactive about drainage improvements. That was a national recognition that we got. And they published that article all over the United States talking about the things we did and the proactive approach that the city and this council has had about improving drainage within our city since 2016. We definitely took that into consideration before all these changes came in front of the council. We will not cross the boundaries of what FEMA requires from the city. There are just some things that make a little more sense that I think we can implement now to help everybody's job be a little more efficient.
And kind of to go with what the mayor is saying, my firm is a sub-consultant on a parish-wide drainage study. And it was kind of eye-opening because what we're doing is gathering data from all of Lafayette Parish. We've met with every mayor. We're working with a bigger company. We're just the local liaison. But at the end of the day, when you look at Broussard compared to every other community in Lafayette Parish, we're in pretty damn good shape when it comes to drainage. But because of y'all have been so aggressive about addressing these problems, in my opinion, if you look at the pack, we're ahead of the pack. And pretty soon that report will come out, and the report's going to be a website where you'll be able to manipulate a map and see where problem areas, they call them hot spots and different things. There's not a lot of hot spots in Broussard, but it's because we've done the work. And we got some recognition, some national recognition from FEMA. And that's kind of what a lot of this is, some forward thinking we know we have problems in certain, not so much drainage problems, flooding, but the way our process is working, and we're trying to address that and make it better.
Walter, that was my second question. Our flood drainage standards, is that conforming with what the rest of the parish does, or are we deviating from a lot from what they do?
What we did a few years ago was we adopted the same drainage standards as Lafayette Consolidated Government. But we added, we have the ability in our drainage ordinance to require them to do more. In other words, if we allow them to do certain things that other people don't, but they have to do a lot more work to prove it. And when I say, and the first thing that comes to my mind is we allow them to do certain things, but they have to do what we call a step backwater analysis, which is what FEMA does. It's gold standard. So we allow some things that other people, we were way ahead of the pack on inline stormwater management. Lafayette Consolidated Government actually outlawed it. They're getting ready to allow people to start doing it again. From a theoretical perspective, it's the best way to do it. And, and Scott, the city of Scott kind of did a public-private partnership, and the mayor of Scott swears up and down that doing this inline management helped his city profoundly. So we were a few years ahead of everybody on some of this. And like I said, I think our ordinance, because we added some spice to it, is a little bit ahead of everybody. And there's actually some things I want to do down the line to bring it up 2 or 3 notches. Not make it harder, make it more accurate, and start focusing. I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of engineering, but I'll tell you real quick. Right now, what we say is you have to design this for a 25-year storm. But what does that really mean? And if you get into the engineering part of it, it doesn't mean a whole lot. What does that mean? What we are heading for is, in a 25-year storm, what's the water level in that ditch? Before and after. We don't want it to go up any more than it is today, and we'd like for it to go down. Because a house doesn't care how many cubic feet per second is flowing in front of it. It cares how high the water got. That's what we're focused on. So, I think we started that, and I think everybody's coming around to understand that's really what we need to be looking at. So, to answer your question is, our regulation, in a sense, in my opinion, is better because we're starting to go that direction of how high are you making the water go when you finish building this development?
So a good example of the inline detention Walter mentioned is Lexi Falls. We've all been through enough hurricanes and flooding events where I think you've seen how that particular inline detention pond works. It swells and swells, but it can handle it. And it's working tremendously. Never has crested over I know it hasn't, over Morgan Street in front of it. But the 3 major drainage projects that this council has funded have been a tremendous help to us. Walter has done us a good job looking at overall drainage improvements throughout the city, but I don't want to send a mixed message. We still have a lot of work to do. Cooley Fortune is the one we're concentrating on next. That is the longest drainage canal. That is Dustin Circle across the Porter Street, Arsenal Park to the swamp. That is the longest by linear feet drainage canal I believe we have in Broussard. Mel and his team are going to save us a tremendous amount of money by swabbing it themselves, but we have road crossings to do. We have bridges in Broussard that need to be addressed, which is an expensive process. We are on the right path, but we are not at the end of the path. We owe the best we can give in drainage to our citizens, and we're going to continue to drive that as long as we are here. But it's working, and it's working because y'all all show up at drainage meetings, and you call, and you get out there when it's raining, and you tell us where the hot spots are, and Mel's crew is in the worst conditions out there making sure it works, but we got to get there. So we're gonna need to do some more projects in the near future, but we have a process that works.
Yeah, please don't take anything I said. The reason we are where we are is because of y'all, and we've kept up the pressure, but we still got a lot to do. And that is, that's one place that we were so far behind the 8 ball, but everybody else is too. But we're getting there, and so don't take anything I'm saying that we should let up on drainage. We can't. That's been the mistake that's made in the past. Is, oh well, it's doing okay now. We can't do that. It's a constant thing that we got to do, because it doesn't take long. All of y'all have been around long enough to know how fast a chicken tree grows. And if you're not watching that channel within just a very short period of time, you have a problem. But we got a lot of old bridges, old structures. We're not by a long shot finished. We need to keep up the pressure.
Any public discussion, Tina?
No public comment.
We have a call for the question.
Question?
District 4,
Yes.
District five,
Yes.
District six,
Yay.
District two,
Yes.
motion carries.
Ordinance number 21-713, an ordinance of the City Council establishing and recognizing a fire prevention bureau within the city fire department. Do we have a motion to introduce?
So move. Second.
Our presenter tonight is Chief Pine from our fire department. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Short and sweet, this ordinance is a continuation of the process to start the Fire Prevention Bureau within our department. Basically, this ordinance will state that the city of Broussard and the council recognizes that the Fire Prevention Bureau operated through the city of Broussard will meet all state standards and, that this is an ordinance that they require for us to turn in to certify us as a department. So it's another step in the process.
Tina, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Council questions or discussions for Chief?
Question.
District five,
Yes.
District six, District two,
Yes.
District four,
Yes.
motion carries.
Resolutions. Item 4.1, resolution number 690-21, a resolution of the City of Broussard Council assuming responsibility for those inspections performed by the Broussard Fire Prevention Bureau or the consequences thereof within the jurisdiction of the governing authority. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Chief, is presenting again for us tonight. Thank you, Chief.
Correct. This is the final step in the process that the state requires, and basically it states that, the city of Broussard and Broussard Fire Department assume all responsibilities for inspections, within our jurisdiction. We're using their standards, we're turning in reports to them, and they're reviewing everything we do, so it's just I guess it's kind of like a hold harmless agreement, that we're taking our own responsibilities for what we do. So we have to have somebody state certified. They monitor every aspect of the process that we have, and we're required to take refresher trainings, et cetera. So it's just a document that they require for us to have on file with them.
Chief, you feel like the cooperation from the state fire marshal and the training that they provide is adequate?
It's
and
very
you-
adequate. Our guy went through a week-long training in Shreveport, about a month ago, and since then, he's already had 2 Zoom trainings that lasted 8 hours apiece. So it's seems like the state is a constant, ongoing thing. They're always doing refresher trainings. They're always doing additional training. So the resources are there. Anything we need, all we gotta do is call and ask, and they'll help us through whatever.
So you feel confident in what
Absolutely.
we're doing here, and your
Absolutely.
recommendation is to pass the resolution?
Absolutely. I feel fully confident that we can, accomplish this goal and help our businesses and, have a smoother process for the people who are trying to open a business in the city of Broussard.
Tina, do we have public comment?
No public comment.
Council discussion?
Question.
District six, District two,
Yes.
District four,
Yes.
District five,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Chief Champagne. Item 4.2, resolution number 691-21, a resolution of the Broussard City Council authorizing the acceptance of the contract for a turn lane on Marteau Road at Fairfield intersection as being substantially complete. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Walter, are you reporting to the council on this item?
Yeah. The work is complete. I think they did a great job. I think Mel concurs with that. So this is just kind of putting the bow on it.
And I believe it came in under budget, if I recall the final
If I
numbers.
remember correctly, yeah.
Tina, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
They've commented on social media. People who were very pleased with the addition of the turn lane. We got a lot of thank you. I haven't talked to anybody, but I'm sure that they are grateful. Any council discussion?
District two, District four,
Yes.
District five,
Yes.
District six. Motion carries.
All right, lastly, congratulations to Sacred Heart Church and Saint Cecilia for a very successful Broussard Community Fair this past weekend, well attended, great weather, so it was a fantastic family event, lots of fun. Thanksgiving is this week, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thank you for attending our meeting, and please drive safely. Meeting adjourned.